For the very first time in the history of mankind, science has officially confirmed that the crucifixion of Jesus was 100% real. Now let's take a look at the new scientific proof, which has finally given us an answer that he was indeed crucified and he was also resurrected 3 days after his death. This right here is the documentary that was published by History Channel, and it gives you like an insight of what the Shroud of Turin basically is.
In over 5 years, this Christian holy relic is referred to as the Shroud of Turin.
Damn, that's a heavy
voice. The Shroud
voice.
of Turin is this amazing relic. At bottom, it's a piece of cloth. It shows a very faint sort of image of a crucified man. And the crucified.
So basically, if you look at this Turin, you don't kind of have any image that's like shown immediately. But then if you look at it closely, you'll actually see that there is a man that's kind of laying over here. Like a man that seems to have been crucified. Now just take a look at this. I don't know if you guys can see this, but we have a much more clear image over here.
Calls us to remember Jesus' death and resurrection.
The Bible talks about the burial cloths. All 4 of the Gospels mention.
Look at this. This is actually mentioned in the Bible where it says, "Then took they the body of Jesus and bound it in the linen cloths," which means that they wrapped his body after his death in a linen cloth.
That Jesus was taken down from the cross. He was wrapped in linen and then his body was put in the tomb.
According to the legends,
apparently this is how it happened. Damn.
The shroud is the cloth that his dead body is wrapped in. And because of the contact with the body of Jesus.
So this is apparently how it looks like. So you kind of have like a much more detailed image right over here.
That transforms and leaves a lasting mark on the cloth.
So now that you guys know what the Shroud of Turin is, now let's get to the scientific experimentation that was done on this stuff. And the proof that you're going to see right now is something that's going to blow your minds off. Now keep this in mind that this is not some sort of a faith that we're putting into this stuff. This is actual scientific proof, which we have finally been able to extract this using the latest technology that we mankind have as of now. Take a look at this whole stuff, man.
One of the most controversial artifacts in history. The Shroud of Turin is a burial cloth that's imprinted with is the actual image of Jesus after his crucifixion.
So this is apparently how it looks like right now. And it's currently kept in display in one of the churches. So you can eventually go there and look at the Shroud of Turin as well. It's possible. You can actually see it for yourself.
Shroud is back in the headlines in a major way with a just-released study finding that the cloth does indeed date back to the time of Christ, and with artificial intelligence having something to say about the Shroud as well. First of all, look, some people have said, well, it was debunked. It only dates back 700 years. Right. But in your research, you found a quite different story. You're the go-to guy on this right now.
What basically happened was like they did a research in 1945 before this. Back then they didn't have technology and stuff, so they kind of just declared it's just an artifact from 700 years ago. But now they kind of just did an entirely different research with the new technology, and for the very first time now it has officially been confirmed that Shroud of the Turin is not 700 years ago. It's from 2,000 years ago, exactly during the time of when Jesus Christ was crucified.
And what people don't realize is the Shroud of Turin is the most studied archaeological artifact in the world. There is not a close second. And so when we talk about this finding, we're not talking...
So apparently there is literally no other artifact from the history of mankind that is as well studied as the Shroud of Turin. So this is like the #1 artifact in the world. So this means that every scientist, every single researcher in the world has done official research on this stuff, and it has officially been proven that it's indeed Jesus Christ.
Talking about just a group of theologians or Bible scholars who want it to be true. We're talking about the most ardent skeptics who now say this is indeed the burial linen cloth of Jesus of Nazareth.
Damn, dude, just look at this stuff. Apparently, it seems like the guys who wanted to prove that this whole thing was a hoax, it's not true, They are the ones who actually got to test this thing and get this research done and all this stuff, and they were really in shock.
So I've gone
that's
truly
the best part of
from
all.
a skeptic of the shroud to a full believer. I believe this is indeed the burial shroud of Jesus that the Gospels, all four, tell us about.
Some other breaking news you shared with me off camera. There is evidence in the shroud of trauma to the person depicted in the shroud.
So trauma basically means that what kind of death Jesus died. So this was also possible for these scientists in order to like figure out, because there were some blood samples that was like left inside this Shroud of Turin, and they examined these blood samples and it gave them a lot more information about how this person died. And this is all possible even after 2,000 years, only because of the technology that we possess right now in this day and age, in this year. So
number one is the wide-angle X-ray scattering imaging. This is by the Crystallography National Research Council. These are not a bunch of theologians. So they use wide-angle analysis, and they see that the linen fibers from the shroud are not 700 years old. They're 2,000 years old.
That's exactly when Jesus existed. From now, 2,000 years ago, and that's exactly when he was crucified. So that's a solid proof already, and it was already debunked that the previous research that was done was not having enough equipments. And now, since they've done like a research second time, it is officially proven that it is indeed from 2,000 years ago.
And that has rocked the scientific world, so much so that the most ardent skeptics now believe we have the genuine article with the Shroud of Turin. When you look at the shroud in person, and I would encourage everyone to look at it, the thing that strikes you the most is the blood.
So you kind of see the blood when you look at the shroud? I mean, is the blood still present in the shroud? I haven't seen it myself in person. I would love to do it someday. Hopefully, if the world doesn't end that soon, I would love to go ahead and take a look at the stuff, because it's one of the most, one of the most researched artifacts, and something that every single person should go and look at the stuff and feel what's actually in there.
There's blood all over the Shroud of Turin, pints of blood, and it's red. And what we know from the latest finding is there is huge amounts of ferritin, that's organ failure, creatinine, bilirubin is released, which causes the blood to stay red. Normally, with human blood, it turns a real dark brown or black on the
Exactly. If you're basically dead in a normal way, and if your blood is like picked up in any of these linen clots, it kind of just turns in a different way. It becomes brown or blackish or in a very dark color. But then if you die out of trauma, there's like all of these things that gets formed in your blood cells. And then it keeps your blood absolutely red for all.
But if the liver secretes bilirubin because you're under so much trauma, when you're dying, it stays stamped in red. To summarize, it's 2,000 years old. That's based on the wax's X-ray scattering. And number two, the blood report shows us that the way the crucified man died in the Shroud of Turin is consistent.
Damn, dude. I mean, all of this stuff is exactly prescribed in the Bible. It's crazy that we are finding this stuff right now. And there's like so many prophecies that's coming true from the Bible that, things that have been told that's going to happen before the second coming of Christ. And now is the time when we actually come across this new latest research, which is officially proving and letting the world know that yes, Bible is true, Jesus is true. And so long, a lot of people have not been having faith because they were believing that, it's not proven that it's real. I mean, Bible could be some sort of a book that's not even real. It could be some sort of a theoretical crap and all that stuff. A lot of people don't believe in this stuff. And I was also one of those guys a couple of years ago. But now we are getting scientific proof that everything is real. And honestly, if you're someone that has always been neglecting in order to know the truth, I think you should definitely watch this video till the end, because this could entirely change your life forever if it hasn't changed already. I would really suggest all of you guys to take a look at the proof that these people have officially found right now.
Number one, it's, as we mentioned, it's the most studied archaeological artifact in the world. There is not a close second. And so when we look at the shrouds, the study of the coins, the textile, the archaeological, hematological, historical data, it means it's very similar to what we would expect to find in the first century in the time of Jesus.
Real quick, what did you think of that AI rendering that was released recently?
Wow, just take a look at this stuff. Let me just Let me just remove my camera from here so you guys can get a clear look at what AI has now created based on all the information that it kind of just scanned from the Shroud of Turin. And just keep this in mind that the AI that these guys have used in order to do this research, it's not like the open AIs that we use as of now in order to create all of these different images. These are like extremely accurate AIs that are used for scientific purposes, which gives you exact imagery of all the research and artifacts that you're going through. And apparently this is exactly how Jesus looked like back in those times. And it seems like he was a 6 foot tall masculine man who came down to earth in order to die for all of our sins.
I loved it. I thought it was striking,
crazy.
nearly cryptic. I like looking at it because it reminds me of a first century masculine Jewish
Exactly,
savior. That
right?
is the savior that we see depicted, that the Shroud of Turin is the authentic article. The best scientists in the world today cannot explain how there is a molecular image in the shroud linen of Turin. This is a cross-disciplinary group. These are weapons specialists, weapons scientists.
They're not the guys, the researchers who did research on this whole thing, they're not the guys who kind of believe in Jesus or like the Bible and stuff. They are someone that absolutely stays skeptical about each and every findings that they find, including artifacts, whatever it may be. And they only do research on extremely precise and with 100% precision weapon researches. From times like World War I, World War II, they kind of found so many different types of weapons. And these guys have used all of those technologies in order to figure out what's the mystery behind the Shroud of Turin.
From Sandia Labs in New Mexico, where they developed the atom bomb. The scholars who went originally in 1978 and had 5 days with the Turin Shroud, they said, give me 20 minutes and we'll prove it's a hoax. All we'll need is 20 minutes.
Damn, they actually wanted 20 minutes in order to prove that this whole thing is fake. And they were actually laughing about it as well.
Giggling and cackling in the hotel lobby because they thought they had gotten a free trip to Italy to prove this thing's a total hoax. One day in, no one was laughing. Best scientists in the world simply cannot explain how the image is there. If you stand a few feet away from the image, it disappears. We cannot explain with our best scientists.
Wait, what? If you stand a few feet away from the Shroud of Turin, you can't see it. But then if you get super close to it and keep looking at it, you need to stare at this whole cloth, right? You can't really see it if you're just looking at it from the first glance. You need to stare into that cloth, and that's the only way you're going to see like the exact body of Jesus Christ coming to life. I mean, it's something that, you know, it feels like it was done using some sort of a technology, but then technology did not exist back in those times. And even at this time, as of now, in order to do something like that, it takes a lot of power and machineries and lasers and massive amount of light in order to create something like that.
How the image is there. That's probably the fact that convinced me the most that it's not a hoax. No one else was crucified the way Jesus was. We had crucified victims, remains all the way from Britannia to Italy to Jerusalem. The way that Jesus died was an especially heinous form of crucifixion, Eric.
So keep this in mind that the researchers, they also did research on all the different types of people that were also crucified during the Roman times. So it's not just Jesus that they did all of this research on. There were different types of people as well. And it seems like none of those guys who were crucified died the same way as Jesus, because the way that they killed him is absolutely gruesome. And if you want to see the exact depiction of how Jesus was killed, then there is a movie which was made by Mel Gibson where they show the last 8 hours before the death of Jesus, and that movie is just absolutely nuts. It's so gruesome. And if you're going to be watching that movie, I'm pretty sure that you will end up in tears, because the way that the movie depicts on how they killed Jesus is beyond what we call as humanity, because that is such a terrific way in order to crucify a person. And it seems like there was literally nobody that was killed in such a horrible way.
This is breaking news on your show. I used to say there were only 372 wounds on the crucified man of the shroud. I actually have to update my research based on this breaking news. We now can count 700 wounds.
Wow. You even count wounds using the new technology. Look at this stuff. Power pelts across body. Wow. They even like calculated every single one of those bruises that he's got into his body, and it was actually seen in the Shroud of Turin. How is that even possible? How is all of these details even possibly given in a piece of cloth? That's just insane.
On the crucified man. That means 120 whiplashes on his body with that flagellation. Let that sink in for a minute. When I see the 700 wounds, that is a demonstration of Christ's love.
The Passion of the Christ, the Mel Gibson film, seemed to be
There's the movie I was talking about.
pretty accurate portrayal. The brutality in that film, it was the real deal.
It was
legitimate.
It was absolutely
There was
crazy.
a demonic level of excruciating pain that Jesus went through. He died of
Exactly, man.
asphyxiation, trauma, organ failure, and he did it willingly. He did it because he wanted to.
He knew what kind of death he was going to die, and then he was like, all right, I'll do it, because I had to do it. And I think the Bible also describes that he cried on the mountain. Before he got arrested, he kind of just cried on the mountain to his father, saying, I don't want to do this. It's very scary. I really don't want to do this. But then his father was like, I'm sorry, son. This is something that you need to do. That's like one of the most gruesome thing you could do to someone.
It's
and
really
it's just crazy
interesting
that he accepted
and we
it.
have to go back to the days of film photography. Do you remember like 1 hour photo places where
course,
you would take
yes.
pictures? Fascinating to weapons scholars, not Bible scholars, is that when they put the image of the shroud through this machine called a VP8 image analyzer.
Wow, VP8 image analyzer. Let me just remove my camera for a second so you guys can read what's on the screen over here. It says VP8 image analyzer revealed the image in the shroud has a three-dimensional topographic quality.
A 3D hologram of Jesus literally emerges of the crucified man. If you put other images through this VP8 image analyzer, it's just essentially like 2D. But this 3D image emerges.
Wow, this can generate 3D imagery? Like you can actually see the nose, the beard, and everything. It's kind of like made in 3D stuff. And apparently this is the machine in which they use the stuff in order to print like a 3D version of what's available in like the Shroud of Turin. And look at this stuff. This is what it kind of just gave us. It looks crazy, man. Look at this. Wow. It kind of just gives you like a full body of Christ. That's crazy the way that it actually shows. Damn, where the hell are we with technology in these days, man? All right, now back to the
This is
interview
what
here.
set off this emergence of research around the shroud. You can see that it has a 3D
Yeah, it does.
topographical quality to it.
I always thought this was just a flat image. I didn't know it had the 3D quality.
I thought it was a flat image as well. I didn't know it was 3D. This is the first time I'm getting to know that it's like a 3D image, and you can literally see like the nose, the beard, and everything just coming out of it. So you need to actually see like the actual 3D picture in order to like see how it looks. And this dude apparently has it. I wish I could see it in person, because you need to like tilt it in order to see from all different angles, and it will actually give you like the face and the body of Jesus just coming outside the picture. That's crazy
When you're
stuff.
researching it in the 1970s, and by the way, one of the scientists was a secular Jewish guy who became a Christian after investigating and researching the shroud.
Right.
Wait, what? The guy who actually did the research was a Jewish guy, and he doesn't believe in, Jesus and stuff. Obviously, the Jews don't believe in that stuff. So he converted into Christian after he found out all the stuff about the research and everything, because before he was not really ready to believe it. But after that, he was like, all right, man, I give up, I finally give up, and it seems like everything is true.
Now, he thought it was a free trip to Italy as well, and he's a Jewish guy. He was a lapsed Jew who now believes, without a doubt, this was Jesus's burial cloth.
A lot of people, even though we have all of these research and scientific proof that's coming out, a lot of people are still very ignorant in order to not address the stuff or not watch the stuff and learn about the truth, because I don't know for whatever reason that is, man. And the Bible also says that there will be a lot of people that even though you show them the proof, that even though you have a scientific proof that God is actually bringing all these things right into your face, and still you would neglect and say, I don't want it. And that's something that the Bible actually says, that there will be a lot of people that will reject God despite whatever he does, despite whatever proof he shows. And I don't know, man. I'm just making this video hoping that someone in the viewers, hopefully you guys could find all of these things or do your own research after watching this video, and it could just open your eyes into what the truth is all about and what is scientifically proven and what we're actually seeing right now. And there's been a lot of different religions. I myself, I was not born in a Christian family, and I never knew about any of these things about Jesus nor the Bible or anything. I was completely new, and I got myself introduced to Jesus in a very spiritual way. And ever since I saw the Lord, it absolutely changed my life forever. And today, whatever I am is all because of the guidance and everything that He's shown. And I know that some people, it's just very hard for you guys to believe this stuff because it never happened with you. And I do understand. And I've also been in the same situation a couple of years ago because I absolutely had no faith in any of these things. And I just thought that, all of this is bullshit. People just try to convert each other into Christianity and all this stuff, But when I actually got to face the Spirit of God, that's the one time that I finally got to know that everything is real. And I started to do research and, find out all this stuff. And I was really in shock and at the same time very happy that at least now I know the truth. And I'm trying to follow and be a better person every single day. And that's the reason why I'm just bringing out these videos in front of you guys. A lot of people have been complaining that, well, why are you not making gaming videos? And why do you make all of this stuff right now? And the reason why is because, I don't know, man, the things that's happening in the world, the prophecies coming true. I think that, I should use the platform that God has blessed me with in order to let people know about these things. Because even if one person from all the millions of views that I get on my channel, even if one person gets to see this video or learn something and realize or change their life and get saved by God's grace, that would actually mean a lot to me than all the success and everything that I've earned on this platform until today. So it really doesn't matter to me if people have been commenting negative stuff about, dude, you should stick to gaming, you shouldn't be doing this stuff. It really doesn't matter. I'm not doing this in order to grow on YouTube and doing this because I have a purpose that I just feel that, God is trying to communicate with me in order to spread the things so that people can get aware about all the things that's going on in the world.
We don't have faith in faith. We don't just come up with a faith feeling. We believe based on evidence. And isn't it interesting in these prophetic times, with everything happening right now in Israel, Jerusalem, around the world, wars and rumors of wars, we see these new evidences emerging, but some still refuse to believe.
Exactly.
I think about John chapter 11. Lazarus had been resurrected from the dead, and the Pharisees still refused to believe in Jesus. So
Exactly, right? That's exactly my point that this man is talking over here. Because in John chapter 11, Jesus said that even if I resurrected Lazarus from the dead, and these Pharisees witnessed it with their own eyes, and they would still say that he's just doing some sort of a black magic, demon stuff and all that, crap. But they were refusing to believe what Jesus was saying, no matter what kind of miracles he showed. And at the same time, if you just look at the things that's currently happening in the world, that Israel is at war. And this was something that was prophesied on the Bible. And at the same time, Euphrates River, which exists near Jordan River, it's completely getting dry. And that was also prophesied in the Bible that before the second coming of Christ, the entire river is going to be completely dry. And that's when the revelation is going to be beginning. And that thing is actually happening right now. And at the same time, it was also mentioned that Project Blue Beam, which is going to be a hoax that the government and the rulers who actually rule the world are going to start off this whole thing called as an extraterrestrial being invasion, like the alien invasion. And there's like all of these drones that are just circulating around the world. And there will be a lot of talks about wars and different wars happening in the world. And it also mentions that Jerusalem, which is in Israel as of now, Jerusalem will actually be surrounded by armies, and there will be fires and destruction everywhere surrounding Jerusalem. And it's not just that. The prophecies, it also mentions that water will actually flush out of desert lands. And take a look at this stuff that's actually happening right now in the world. There's water that's flushing out of desert. Nobody knows where it's coming from. And a couple months ago, the Sahara Desert, one of the biggest deserts, is now completely filled with snow. And this is also prophesied in the Bible.
The desert, more commonly known for its hot and dry climate, is currently witnessing this very rare occurrence. On January 18th, temperatures had plummeted to -2 degrees Celsius in northwest Algeria.
Do you think that's naturally possible? How's all of this happening?
43 years.
Out of nowhere. This has never happened in the history of mankind. And for the very first time, it's happening. And it's not just this, even the prophecy where Euphrates River is going to be drying up, that is also happening. Just take a look at this
River
stuff right
continues
here.
to dry up as prophesied within the Bible. This is an amazing footage I came across from 2020 in comparison to 2021 in the same spot. You'll see right now, here's 2020. You'll see how full it is.
Look at this stuff. This is basically how it looks like in 2020. And in 2021, you will see how different this exact same place is. And this has never happened before in the history. The Euphrates River has never, ever, ever dried up before. This is the first time that's actually happening. And this was prophesied in Bible that this whole thing will take place, including Israel's war with the Middle East, including Israel capturing Palestine. And at the same time, it also says that Euphrates River will also get dry and Project Bluebeam, that is the thing that Bible actually warns us about the leaders in power will actually end up doing before the second coming of Christ. All of those things are happening where we get this fake alien invasion, extraterrestrial beings just taking over the world, and there will be a massive destruction, all that stuff. Everything is happening at the same time.
And you'll see here in a
look
moment
at this stuff.
just the level that it's dropped to. Past because when the sixth angel pours out his vial on the river Euphrates and the water therefore is dried up so the kings of the east can be prepared. So that was 2020. And as you can see here, 2021.
This is the exact same place in 2021. And we are living in 2025, and the river is getting drier and drier day by day. And according to the Bible, the day in which the river will be absolutely dry, and I mean 100% dry, is when the revelation that is mentioned in the Bible is going to be starting, when Antichrist is going to take over the world. So just
and the
take a look
river
at
is
this whole
completely
stuff.
dried up. We aren't at the part of Revelation where the angels are pouring out their vials, but it's moving towards this time. And I
Look at this stuff. It's completely dry, man. What other proof do you
believe that
guys
this is a
need?
foreshadow right before the angel pours his vial on the river and it's completely dried up, and the four angels that are bound there are loosed, that will cause absolute havoc upon the earth as mentioned in Revelation 9:13 through 15.
So this stuff, everything is actually happening. It's not like everything is fake. I know some people still wouldn't believe because, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's up to your own self if you whether or not if you want to believe it or not. But it is definitely happening, guys. That's the reason why I'm making this video, so that, you know, some people might get aware about what's actually going on in the world. Apparently, this is the church in which Shroud of the Turin is actually kept as of now. If you want to visit this church, it's the Royal Chapel of the Cathedral of San Giovanni Battista Church. And this is what the reel actually says. Just take a look at this
has
stuff.
just been made in regards to the Shroud of Turin, a controversial linen shroud regarded by millions to be the one Jesus was buried in, has baffled the world for centuries.
Exactly.
The shroud bears a faint image of the front and back of a bearded man, which many believe is Jesus's body miraculously imprinted onto the fabric.
And it's actually miraculously imprinted. It's not like something that just formed just because of blood. Because
But
it's
research
not
in the
possible.
1980s appeared to debunk the idea it was real. Now, Italian researchers who used a new technique involving X-rays to date the material,
which was done right now. This is like the recent experiment which was done, due to which, you know, the Shroud of Turin, the case was reopened and they kind of did this whole research. And now we actually found out something
have
crazy.
confirmed it was manufactured around the time of Jesus, about 2,000 years ago. The shroud has been preserved since 1578 in the Royal Chapel of the Cathedral of...
Look at this. It's actually displayed right now. You can go ahead and take a look at this stuff. I think everyone should go ahead and look at this. This is like the real Shroud of Turin that they've just displayed over
San
there.
Giovanni Battista in Turin, Italy.
That's crazy, dude. I would love to go ahead and see how this whole shroud thing looks like. Now take a look at this documentary which was recently just done based on how they found out the image that was actually imprinted on the Shroud of the Turin. Now this image was not very clear to the guys who actually saw this with their bare eyes, but then when they put it into a machine and then it starts scanning it, it gives you a very, very clear image of what Jesus basically looked like. Now take a look at this stuff.
In 2011, how they've been experimenting with ultraviolet excimer lasers. These are high power, these are industrial lasers, not some kind of pointer. And they determined a 40 nanosecond burst achieves the very same depth and coloration as we see on the shroud. This experimentally shows how the image could indeed be the result of light.
So, for those of you guys who don't understand what this basically means, so apparently what happens here is that the Shroud of Turin it has this imprintation of Jesus' body in it. And this is not something that's kind of imprinted out of blood or something like that. Now, according to science, it seems like the imprintation of Jesus' face and his entire body is absolutely impossible for something like that to exist on a linen cloth. But how did this thing even happen? And what the scientists have done is that they have apparently used some sort of a laser technology in which they tried to imprint some sort of an image in a plain linen cloth. And in order to do that, it is only possible if you're using some crazy amount of technology, such as this huge laser thing, which kind of emits 15,000 lasers all at the same time, concentrating in one particular spot. But then remember, in Shroud of Turin, there is an entire body that is kind of imprinted, which means that there's apparently been some sort of a burst of energy that kind of passed through the body of Jesus Christ. And some people say that the reason why that kind of energy just happened is probably on the day when Jesus was resurrected and his soul could have just entered the body, and due to which there was a massive amount of light that kind of just emitted out of that linen cloth, which kind of just imprinted the entire body of Jesus on that particular cloth. Now, the scientists actually did a massive research on this stuff. Now, these are not some sort of biblical scholars. These are the guys who are weapon experts, and they've been doing this stuff, and they actually took on this whole mission in order to prove that the Shroud of Turin is not actually true. And then what happened after they did this full research left them in absolute shock. Now, take a look at what they have to say here.
To create the shroud image in a split second.
To replicate the shroud image, you would need 14,000 lasers, all going off instantaneously at the same time.
I have to remind everybody, lasers weren't invented until about 1946.
So there was no lasers until 1946. So this artifact is 2,000 years old, which is at the same time as to when Jesus existed. Now, watch this stuff.
Something of that nature in medieval times or even in the first century just couldn't exist.
But if the shroud...
Look at this stuff. Look at the way that, his entire face, the body and everything is imprinted. This needs like a huge burst of energy is what the scientists are saying.
But is truly from the first century, an event from the Bible might reveal an answer.
Just before Jesus makes his last trip to Jerusalem, takes Peter, James, and John with him up on a high mountain and is transfigured before them.
Some turn to the Bible and point to the transfiguration of Christ that took place when Christ was praying with the disciples. They read scripture and they highlight the passage that indicates his face was shining as the sun and his clothes became bright white.
So apparently his disciples actually saw the real version of Jesus, where he showed them what he looks like in reality, which is like a bright light that's just emitting out of his own body.
In the biblical account, Jesus is transfigured into a form of energy or light.
Exactly. So apparently it seems like he's some sort of a light. So basically what happened later after his death is also a massive amount of light that just happened to be inside of this linen cloth, that out of nowhere, it's unexplainable how such a technology was even possible back in those times. Mel Gibson even speaks about the new latest research, which is done on Shroud of Turin, and it's actually very interesting to see what this guy has to say about this whole situation.
Recently, they verified the Shroud of Turin. Have you seen that?
They used to think that it was only a couple hundred years old.
Yeah.
They also don't understand how it was made, which to me is very fascinating because it's not paint. They don't know what caused the image itself and how that technology would have even been available.
And intense.
Back in those times, that technology was not possible back in those times.
Light, I mean, atomic, to leave almost like a photographic imprint on a piece of cloth. A first century Hebrew male, because the hairstyle was from the first century, that he was about 6 feet tall.
I told you, he was 6 feet tall. Archaeologists have finally found something that proves that God is 100% real. Now, this is one of the biggest discoveries that humankind has ever made so far, because they just found the sulfur balls and an entire city that is completely burned down and was submerged under the water. And now that the entire river is dry, and archaeologists just discovered that there is a whole entire city that looks exactly as mentioned in the Old Testament, also known as the Torah. And for those of you guys who don't know, there was a city named named Sodom and Gomorrah, which had a massive civilization of humans that were committing sins which is very similar to what we do these days in our generation. One of the craziest sins that God was really not happy with back in those times was the thing that is also growing in our current generation, which is known as the LGBTQ, and homosexuality being normalized was the biggest sin back in those times that God was not able to tolerate. And obviously, for those of you guys who haven't read the Torah in the Old Testament, back in those times, God was not really very merciful, to be honest. So when God witnessed that this city named Sodom and Gomorrah was committing excessive sins, he decided to rain down millions of fiery sulfur balls. And what does these sulfur balls do? It basically just burns down the entire city, with all the men and women and children and basically all the livestock, everything completely destroyed because of all the sins becoming excessively generalized back in those times. And back then, God really liked this one dude named Lot, who is someone that also lived in the same city, but then God ends up warning Lot and his family in order to leave before he rains down the fiery sulfur balls into the city and destroys it completely. Now, this is what happened in the Old Testament of the Bible, or even in the Torah. And what's interesting is that there is this archaeologist named Expedition Bible on YouTube. He ended up going to this location where the Sodom and Gomorrah city is located, and here he found out that the entire city was completely burned down. And if you walk down into the city, you'll actually find that it is completely filled.
And this is the site that the archaeologists associated with Gomorrah.
Look at this stuff. Every single thing in the entire place is like completely burned down. The whole mountain and the valleys and everything, it's completely burned down. And currently it looks like a mountain, but then back in those times, it was an actual city with millions of people living in there. So the whole thing was completely destroyed. So the entire city was completely destroyed, and it was burned down to ashes by the sulfur balls that started raining down from heaven.
So here you can see that ashy layer that's just underneath the surface. This is full of burned pottery. It's full of the fragments of human bones. The question is what evidence is there of this burning sulfur that rained down? Well,
look at that stuff.
It seems that the culprit are these sulfur balls that are also found in this area.
That's crazy, dude. So obviously, you know that if you go down to this location and if you start digging, you'll see a lot of human bones from back in those times. And there were millions of people that used to live in the city, and everybody were burned down because of all the sins that they've been committing. Now here what happens is that the archaeologists, they try to research the location and see if they can find any sulfur balls, but then there were not many sulfur balls left in that location, because the property of a sulfur is in such a way that once it starts burning, it doesn't stop burning until it's completely consumed 100%. So no matter what it is, it's not going to stop burning, and it's going to burn each and everything in its way, including the entire city and its people with it. Now obviously this means that all the sulfur balls that kind of just rained down in the city is almost 90% already consumed by the fire. So there were only very few pieces that was left out, which the museum started collecting, and they kind of just kept this in there because this was some sort of a biblical museum that you can go down to Jerusalem and you can actually take a look at the stuff, where you can actually go down to Israel to this archaeological museum, and you'll actually find that they have all of these historical monuments saved down in this museum. And here you can see this is basically what the sulfur looks like, which rained down from heaven. And that's because obviously, as we have already spoken, sulfur, once it starts burning, you can't really preserve it. It's basically going to get completely consumed unless it lands into some sort of a water body, which means that there was also a massive river near the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. So the archaeologists decided that the river that was flowing all the way from Sodom and Gomorrah, that was connecting to the Euphrates River, which is now almost dried up. And this is also something that you can see in the prophecy of Revelation in the Bible, that it already says that the river is going to be completely dry. And after that happens is when the Antichrist is going to be showing himself. And what the archaeologists did is that they went to this site where the river is now completely dried up, and to their surprise, they noticed that there was an entire city that was completely submerged, which for the very first time, they're now able to go ahead and take a look at this massive city with all the archaeological evidence, digging up stuff. And now, luckily, they ended up finding something fascinating. Just take a look at this.
How many? So this is a sulfur ball. Sulfur balls. All these are sulfur balls. Here, here.
Oh my goodness.
Look at all of them. There. Sulphur ball. Sulphur ball.
And this is the place where like the entire city was like completely burned down, and these sulfur balls, can you believe it? They just rained down from heaven. This was from God himself. And this is the place where there was like a massive river flowing down, and right now it's like completely dried up, and the sulfur balls that landed into the water, they still survived because they were not consumed by fire because of the water body that was present in there. So these sulfur balls, they ended up landing all around here. So if you go down to this place, currently it looks like a mountain. Entire place is going to be filled with thousands and millions of sulfur balls that is already mentioned in the Bible. And the archaeologists, they start digging this stuff up. Look at that stuff. You can basically find sulfur balls all over the place, and that's insane. I think he also tries to burn it in order to show us like how this works.
Formation,
look at this stuff.
You can see sulfur balls.
It's stuck everywhere, like in all the places, like the mountains, and anywhere you just go by, you're gonna be finding these sulfur balls.
In situ, in place, they're placed right here in this particular layer. So
that's insane, man. That's a huge sulfur ball. And these things only survive because of water?
So what they're doing is they're eroding out of this, right? And then washing down in the ravines.
That is crazy.
So you have all of these preserved in this geological layer that goes and goes and goes, and so that's where they're coming from.
And then he also tries to burn this thing up, I think.
But be careful, because man, when you get a whiff of these things,
it just gets consumed completely. Look at that. This is basically how it looks like when it's like burning, and it just comes raining down. Imagine millions of these sulfur, and it's going to be pretty much the same as how raindrops are just falling in when there's like massive heavy rain. But then instead of raindrops, you're going to be having these sulfur balls that are fiery, and there were millions of them that just fell down and burned down the entire city into complete ashes.
This is one of the reasons why
look at that stuff.
Sulfur balls would only be preserved in water. If they strike the land, then they're going to burn up. You can see the goo. It's just melting down to goo and then dripping off.
That looks like a marshmallow.
So really, anywhere that they would have landed on land, they would have burned up like this, and they would have burned anything flammable around them. This is how the cities and the plain were burned.
That's crazy. But this is not it, because we also have another fascinating discovery that the same archaeologists have just found. Where in the Old Testament and Torah, it also mentions that Lot and his family were spared, and God asked them to never look back and just keep running forward while the city is going to be completely burned down into ashes. And if any of you turns around and looks back at the city, God said that you will be cursed to turn into a pillar of salt. Now, this is where all the things went wrong, because while they were running, Lot's wife decided that she needs to turn back around and take a look at what's happening to the city. So once she did that, she was cursed and she turned into a pillar of salt. And guys, watch this closely, which is undeniable proof of Sodom and Gomorrah, the body of Lot's wife, which is completely turned into a pillar of salt, which also kind of looks like a womanish figure, but then it's a pillar and it's completely made out of salt. That's right next to Sodom and Gomorrah as they were running away. Just take a look at this stuff.
Of Lot's wife.
Look at this stuff.
Discovered near the Dead Sea, close to where Sodom and Gomorrah are thought to have been located, there is an unusual pillar that some claim is Lot's wife.
Look at that stuff.
Archaeologists have studied its.
So apparently this, it kind of looks like a pillar. At the same time, it's very disfigured. She is the woman that turned into the pillar of salt. So they decided to go ahead and test the substance of whatever this rock-like substance is looking. And they found out that this whole substance is made out of 80% of pure salt. And that's
Strange
just
shape,
crazy.
And found that it is composed of 80% salt. What makes this discovery so intriguing is that the Bible says God turned Lot's wife into a pillar of salt when she looked back at the burning cities. While it has not yet been confirmed whether she is encased within the salt, the site provides compelling evidence. This includes millions of pure sulfur balls, mountains of ash covering ancient buildings, and clear burn marks found throughout the area. The site also aligns perfectly with the biblical timeline and location described in Genesis, including Lot's cave, where he hid during Sodom's destruction.
So when Sodom and Gomorrah was destroying, Lot and his family, they kind of decided to go ahead and hide in a cave. So this right here is the cave in which Lot and his family were hiding when the entire city was burning down. And the archaeologists, they also managed to find out the cave in which Lot and his family was hiding. So all of these stuff,
this cave is
just
located near the ruins
undeniable
of the
proof.
cities
And
and
look at this
matches the
stuff.
geographical details provided in the biblical account. Local legend and archaeology also support the claim, with early Christians building a church around it as a sign of reverence, further adding credibility to the discovery.
That's crazy,
This is believed to be the actual remains of Lot's wife. Discovered near the Dead Sea, close to where Sodom and Gomorrah are thought to have been located,
That is
there is
crazy.
an unusual
That is
pillar
just
that some
crazy.
claim is Lot's wife.
So honestly, guys, I really don't know what to say. In order to going out there and exploring and finding out some of these historical evidence, and they've been doing some crazy research out there, man. And honestly, I really wanted to go ahead and make this video because a lot of people, they don't really understand that the scriptures and the Bible and the Torah and these all things are actually real. And everything that's written in there is an actual historical event. Like all the different histories like we humans have, like the Romans and the Greece empires, and we also have the Vikings that invaded England. And if we can believe all of these historical events to be real, but there are still some people out there in the world that find the scriptures of God very hard to be believable because they don't really have any solid proofs. And that is the reason why I decided to go ahead and take the time of my day in order to go ahead and make this video. Archaeologists have just found the remains of Noah, the man who's built the infamous ark as mentioned in the Bible. Now, this new discovery has just found out the bones of Noah and his family all the way in Mount Ararat, which is the same place where the Ark of Noah is currently rested. Now, the bones that the archaeologists found is not any regular human bones. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at the proof that we have just found about the remains of Noah.
The government of Turkey claims they have found the grave of Noah. This is a normal human thumb bone. Underneath is a giant human thumb bone.
This right here, it's just compared to like the original human thumb bone to like the Noah's thumb bone. It seems like he was a massive human in size.
This was found right near Mount Ararat.
That's just like this part of the bone right here, like this particular part. It's so huge compared to like Noah's bone. Like our bone is only so much, and Noah's bone is apparently this big, and it's just this tiny part of the bone, and that's what they're
in Turkey.
They're basically just finding
People say
around
one
here.
man and 3 boys could not build a boat that big.
That's true.
Oh, you didn't see those boys. Hey, Bubba, bring me that tree, would you? There's a jawbone in a hotel in Turkey on display right now.
Wow, look at the jawbone difference. This is basically how the jawbone of Noah's looked like.
6.5 inches.
So this is our human bone, and then this is Noah's jawbone, and this is like his sons and all that stuff. There is a non-petrified human jawbone that was found in Turkey near the same mountain.
Any one of you could put your head inside and rattle it back and forth inside the jawbone.
Wow.
The legend in Guam is that giant people built the latte stones there. Who is moving these giant rocks anyway?
That's true.
That's a camel in front of it for scale, folks.
So the camel is right over here, if you guys can see. This is how small or tiny the camel is, and we humans are like really small compared to that. Back in Noah's time, they used to move such huge rocks. It just seems very impossible in a very practical way if you think at it. You actually need some equipments, machineries, and all that stuff in order to move such heavy weights. But then back in those time, it seems like they very easily moved these things.
In Wasaki, Wisconsin, 100 years ago, giant skeletons were found in a burial mound. One of the skulls was 3 times the size of ordinary humans. In Walkertown, Indiana, 8 giants ranging from 8 to 9 feet long, all wearing heavy copper armor, were found. Through the bungling of the diggers and the disinterest of the museum establishment, the discoveries were scattered and lost. The Smithsonian has been very active in hiding discoveries about giants because it goes against the evolution theory. See, evolution says we started off tiny and we're getting bigger and better and stronger and smarter. I think the Bible indicates we started off bigger and we're getting smaller and weaker and dumber.
So yeah, obviously, the government wants us to believe that the evolution of us coming from apes was like the reality. But then the Bible obviously says, and there's even archaeological proof, like take pyramids, for example. Obviously, apes did not build those things. So if we just evolutionized from apes, then who the hell built those pyramids? Who the hell built all of these ancient archaeological evidence that we currently have? But then the Bible already says people who lived before us, like Noah and his family, and some of these ancient people from the scriptures, the Bible, Torah, and all those stuff, you know, these scriptures are actually real, and there are scientific and archaeological evidence that is currently present in order to back up all of those claims. But then there's nothing apart from us matching our DNA, which is kind of similar to the monkeys and apes. But apart from that, there's nothing in common between us and the monkeys. They have never evolutionized. We still have the chimpanzees, we still have the apes. It doesn't mean that they are evolutionizing or growing into something else even after all these years. They're still monkeys. They're dying monkeys, being born monkeys, and there's nothing different from them from many generations. So that's where the evolution theory that the government wants us to believe is just basically omitting all of these archaeological evidence that these great archaeologists have been finding that is related to the Bible. What's interesting is that this is exactly the same place in which the same man named Ron Viet, who's actually the archaeologist who also found the Noah's bones and his remains and his family's remains, as well as the same guy who also found the Ark of the Covenant, which seems to be resting all the way down below the mountain in which Jesus was crucified. So right beneath the mountain, he took permission from Israel and he started digging all the way deep inside. There is the box, which is the Ark of the Covenant that lies inside. Now, he's the same guy who also found Noah's Ark, which is resting in the Mount Ararat. Now, take a look at what Ron Viet has to say about the discovery that he's made.
We believe that God has preserved in the earth and under the seas remains of the major events discussed in the Bible. Physical remains, chemical remains, and things that you and I can see, feel, test, and in the case of Sodom and Gomorrah and its sulfur, even taste. These things have been preserved by divine power to a point in time when by satellite TV relay systems and the ability to translate everything of interest into most everyone's language, these things can be shown to the inhabitants of the...
And somewhere right around this area, they also found the grave of Noah. So take a look at what he has to say about the grave of Noah.
Right off in this area were 2 grave markers, and we have those on film at home. I took them in 1977. Now, we made a little booklet and made sketches of all these things. And one of the people, a real good Christian, so I gave him one of these books. And finally he found somebody that knew where this was, paid them $400 to dig up Mrs. Noah's grave.
Mrs. Noah's.
And again, I have the description of the people that interrogated the guy that dug it up, and some of the folks that saw it as it migrated westward and was eventually sold for over $100 million on the black market.
Wow. So it seems like people, whoever dug the remains of Noah's wife, they actually sold the remains for like $100 million in the black market. I wonder what they're going to do with it. We never know what kind of intentions people basically have around the world. But yeah, it seems like they actually did get their hands on Noah's actual remains, and it was the same guy, Ron Viet. And this right here is like the gravestone, which was used on Noah's grave, basically.
Like this. It's as if God had preserved this piece for that very moment for them to see. And what's interesting about it, the Bible says that they used gopher wood.
Yes. So it's like a very special kind of a wood, which even after thousands of years, it wouldn't just break off or like wouldn't crack and wouldn't just decompose.
We've discovered that this is laminated like plywood.
Yes.
Many thin layers put together, which would make it super strong.
If you look at it, it almost looks like they were making something. Yeah. You know, it looks like it was making some pins. Maybe they were pouring maybe it was a wooden mold for steel pins or something.
So these were the equipments used in order to like build the Noah's Ark. And then we even have like a piece of that wood which was used in order to build the Ark, which is right there.
These are all petrified. This was the top of the boat.
Look at
This
that.
lighter color petrification.
Yes.
And you get to the bottom of the boat, and the metals made everything darker when it petrified.
That's crazy. And then they end up finding the massive bone of Noah, which is way huge compared to humans.
And
that's the remains that they've found so
this
far.
looks like a picnic.
Okay, this is when Ron entered the cave system. And when he first entered the Ark of the Covenant cave, the stalactite you see there was in the opening. And he broke it loose so they could crawl through that hole into the cave system. And that's the actual stalactite from the cave system. And it shows the type of material that's in the cave. It's very hard. It's limestone that's turned into this hard substance. This is the bones of someone that didn't turn to ash completely at Gomorrah.
So that's obviously Lot.
See, they
and
burned
his
up,
family.
but they didn't quite turn to ash. They preserved their bones. So that's what's left of someone from Gomorrah.
So this basically proves that there were survivors, and the survivors most probably that should most probably be Lot and his family. Obviously, his wife turned into a pillar of salt, and then the rest of them who actually survived, their remains, which is not really completely burned, but at the same time, it's kind of half burned. They're half dead, half alive. That's the kind of discovery that the archaeologists have officially made, and this basically proves that everything that we've read so far in the scriptures is actually real. And this right here is the gravestone, which is basically shown to you in the video just a couple of minutes ago. So this is the wooden material that was used in order to like create the whole cemetery of Noah's family. So they kind of just built this whole thing in, and they have a bunch of cross everywhere. We don't know why they have like these cross, but obviously Jesus came many years after, but still they had all of these cross that's like engraved into these wooden chips. So it's very bizarre to know that we actually have all of these artifacts that is now officially being found by archaeologists. And this just gives us a lot more evidence to prove that everything that we have known so far, everything that we have seen in the scriptures read, is actually true. Something crazy is happening in Jerusalem as we speak. And if you're someone that's been following the Jewish cultures, then you probably know what the holy fire is. But this usually takes place every single year when Jesus was crucified, and after 3 days, he rose back. Where there is a miracle that happens where people visit this location and they actually get to see the Holy Spirit of Jesus Christ himself. And this only happens for a very short time, like for a couple of minutes. And then the Spirit of God ends up ascending back into heaven. Now, I'm going to show you something in this video that's going to absolutely blow your minds off. Because I don't know if you guys have heard about this event that takes place in the location where Jesus was crucified. And after he was crucified, his body was kept in a tomb where pilgrims are allowed to go in there and worship and pay their respect to Jesus. And you actually get to see the location in which his body was literally kept after he was dead. On this particular day, every single year in Jerusalem, something crazy happens. For there's this miracle that followers of Jesus, anyone that believes in him, anyone that has 100% faith and believes in Christ, all they need to do is simply just buy a candle and go stand in this location, and you will magically see that your candle will automatically light up as soon as the Holy Spirit descends into the tomb of Jesus in that particular time when the resurrection happened 2,000 years ago, which is now currently known as the day of Easter. And what's actually interesting is that entire Jerusalem and all the candles around them are automatically going to be burning on its own. And the best part about this holy miracle, it just never burns anybody, even if you touch it, or even if you try to put a tissue paper, even those paper doesn't get burnt. Your clothes doesn't get burned. People actually tried this out with their beards, their clothes, their hands. Nothing happens as long as the presence of Holy Spirit remains, which is supposed to be for a couple of minutes, where the legend says that the Holy Spirit of God comes down in there during the time of resurrection every year. And one of the most weird things that I've noticed, and the reason why I really wanted to come out and share this whole thing, because I think a lot of people don't really know about these incredible miracles. And I believe, coming from a non-Christian background and non-Christian family, I myself never knew about this stuff until one of my sister's friends, who's been to Jerusalem and got to take a look at this event, he spoke to me about this miracle that happens in Jerusalem, and I was very fascinated to learn more about this stuff. And so I went online, started searching for videos, and I was mind blown to see what actually happens in here every single year during the time of Easter. That's when the resurrection of Jesus Christ happened in that exact location. Now, there are plenty of videos out there, and this is actually one of my most favorite ones, because this dude is actually trying to burn his own beard, and literally nothing happens when he does that. And it only doesn't burn those people who have complete faith at how this thing works. I don't know, whatever he's talking. Look at that stuff. He is literally burning. He's literally burning his beard. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. He's burning his hand. Nothing happens. It's one of the best clips that I've seen so far. Damn. And I think that needs a lot of faith, by the way. And if you guys are not aware of how this thing works, it's basically very similar to the biblical story of how Simon tries to walk on the water. And initially he starts walking on the sea, and then he starts doubting, and then his faith breaks down. And that's when Simon starts drowning. So it's all about faith. And that's basically how this whole thing works in Jerusalem as well. So if you are someone that hasn't visited this place, I really, really want to go ahead and visit, especially take a look at this miracle that only happens in Easter. I really hope sometime in the future I get to do it. I don't know how things works. I've heard that they usually don't allow people from outside, and you know, there's a lot of complicated stuff. We also have another crazy clip I want to show you guys. Just take a look at this clip right here, right? There are people that are actually trying to burn their cloth, and this woman that I've seen, she's literally burning a cloth. It's basically a thin netted cloth, as far as I can know. It's a linen cloth, and it doesn't burn at all. She's literally just putting in there all the fire, and as you can see, she just keeps using it over and over, and her cloth just turns black as well. And as you can see, nothing happens. The fire doesn't hurt anybody at all, and that's the basic miracle that goes on. And people in Jerusalem say that it's because of the resurrection, and the Holy Spirit of Christ comes back again. When the Holy Spirit of Christ starts to visit the location in which his resurrection happened, that's when the entire city and Israel gets blessed from God himself. So during this time, it seems like nobody gets harmed, and that's one of the most craziest things that I have ever seen so far. And this is apparently how these things happen, right? There are people gathered all around, and everyone's candles and torchlights just starts lighting up on its own. And this happens on Easter, man. That's just crazy. One of the best miracles that I've seen. Look at that stuff. It's not like they light it up on their own. It basically lights up on its own, and nobody knows how it happens, and that's basically what the miracle is all about. This is basically where Jesus was placed after the crucifixion. So this was like the tomb in which they have now kind of built a small temple or an altar where people basically go in there to pay their respects. Obviously, idol worshipping, not something he recommends, but yeah, it's really crazy that we have some of these historical places that still exist. And this is where the light basically comes inside on its own in this particular time. So the priest basically goes inside, and they're supposed to not look at the Spirit, because anyone that looks at the Spirit of God ends up dead. So they make sure that they're not supposed to look at the Spirit. But then there's this one person who's supposed to like be extremely pure, or whatever the culture is. So they basically send him inside. He carries this candle, and apparently the Holy Spirit just descends in there, that the holy fire has begun. Everyone's candles just starts burning on its own. And after that, what's crazy is that all the different governments from across the world, they basically carry out this lamp in a completely secure box just to make sure that the blessing of God reaches all over the world. So that's basically how it works every single year. So I was really fascinated by one of these miracles that's happening. And now that we are very close to Easter, tomorrow is Good Friday. That's when Jesus was crucified. So I thought, why not go ahead and share this message and let people know what actually happens on Easter. And it's not just something that people blindly believe on. There are some historical evidence and there are some miracles that also happens along with it, even till this very day. And right now in 2025, I think if you're lucky enough, we'll once again see another holy fire that's going to happen just 3 days from this video. Now, of course, if you get any footage of this whole event, I will of course share all of it on this channel so that you guys can keep yourself informed with all of these miracles, prophecies, and everything that's currently coming true. Now, a lot of people claim that this could end up being fake. They could be using some sort of a chemical in the candles that they're using inside the church. So you know what? A group of Muslims decided to go ahead and put this on a test where they used their own candles. And this time they even made sure that they're not going to be using the candle wick. And rather, they decided to remove the wick completely and use lead instead, because this substance was not going to work out with whatever chemical magic that the church was that they were trying to fool people with. So they ended up doing this whole experiment, and the results that came out of it was just absolutely fascinating.
Every single year, including when the Muslims controlled Jerusalem, the holy fires appeared. Now this is important because this is
look at that stuff. It doesn't burn.
To the point where the Muslims tore down the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, but the flame appeared over the slab the next year. When the Christians got it, they rebuilt the thing. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Muslims took control of it again.
So the slab, they actually mean the place in which Jesus' body was basically laid up after the crucifixion.
The holy fire would come down to the roof of the basilica like a dove, looking like a dove, and light the lamps. Wow. And all the Muslims would convert to Christianity. So the Caliph goes, well, this isn't going to work for us. So they pull out all the wicks, the cotton wicks, and insert lead where the wicks could be. So the holy fire comes down, lights all the lamps anyway. So then the Caliph goes, put them all out. Holy fire comes back down again, lights them again.
You see that? So what they basically did was, if we use a candle wicks, right, there could be any sort of chemical reaction that these guys might be doing. We never know. There could be whatever gimmicks that they might be running behind the basilica. But then that's where the Muslim guys came in, and they decided to use the lead. And this time, what they did was they basically turned the fire off manually. So they basically just shut the fire off, and they waited to see if the fire is burned. And they waited to see if it's going to burn back again. And to their surprise, it actually did. It just kept burning back again and again, no matter how many times they tried to shut it off.
The third time he goes, that's it. This is, we don't know what this is, but it's not a trick. So it's been going on for 1,700 years. And originally, the edicule is the building that surrounds the slab where the body lay.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the edicule. So we had this on film. So Giulio Fanti, who we interviewed, goes to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and he gets on his candles, he gets the holy fire.
Wow.
He has a piece of linen like this.
I really want to experience this, man.
Are two candles. Let me see if I can try to make this work. So one candle is here, and it is a normal candle, and he lights it. The other candle he lights with the holy fire. So this candle is just a lighter, takes a cigarette lighter and lights it. This candle is the holy fire. The one here with the normal fire burns right through the paper. Fire here just scorches it.
Wow.
Just scorches it.
Wow.
And so we think, this is why our film is so important. We think the holy fire is the mechanism that creates the image on the shroud. Because this is...
Wow. That's also very, very fascinating discovery as well. Because the Shroud of the Turin, it kind of just leaves an imprintation of Jesus's face. and the entire body itself. And that's basically believed that there is some sort of an extreme energy that just surpassed through this cloth of linen, which kind of just imprinted his entire body's perfect image. So they say that, you know, the pilgrims, they basically say that it's because of the holy fire. And that's basically how it looks. It's basically fire in its own form. And also Moses saw God in the same way, right? He saw the bush up in the mountain, and a lot of people saw God in the form of fire. So God is basically light, but then it's not like the regular fire which just burns through things. This fire in particular is very different. It doesn't burn, but then it has all the elements of what a fire should have. And that's just one of the craziest, fascinating things. It seems like we have just found what could be the bodies of the giants that existed in the biblical times. In the Old Testament of the Bible, it actually says the giants did actually exist in this world before God decided to flood the entire earth. And now it seems like we might have actually found these giants. Now, I know it sounds crazy, but you guys need to stick around with me, because there is a solid proof that brings into evidence that all of these biblical scriptures are indeed true. Now, I don't know if you guys know about how some of these massive mountains that actually resembles like the body of a giant. Take a look at this video right here. It's going to give you a lot more explanation as to what I'm speaking about.
Some people in Northern Europe were surprised when they found a very strange rock. I don't know what kind of stone it is, but its color is very similar to flesh and blood. Legend has it that it is the flesh of petrified giants. Because it was not suitable to exist in the New Age, God destroyed them, and they turned to stone. These rocks look...
And by the way, if you take a look at these rocks, these are like the chunk of rocks that are cut down from these mountains, which actually looks like a massive giant. And tell me, how does this not look like a chunk of meat itself? Because to be honest, this looks like a mixture of muscle and fat. And this literally looks like a lamb steak, to be honest.
Nothing more than chunks of meat.
Wow, look at that stuff. This literally looks like a rotten meat, man.
Not only that, people also discovered rocks with strange shapes, such as human faces and bodies. The mountains look like human muscles. Do you believe there are giants turned to stone in the world?
So this is what I was talking about in my previous video, where there's a mountain that literally looks like a snake's head, and it also has scales on it. Look at this stuff. This looks like a woman, because after thousands of years, maybe the bodies just turned into mountains due to nature taking its course. And then a perfect body of a female, and we got like the legs right here, looks exactly like a petrified giant.
About this video, how people are claiming that these Himalayan mountains used to be some kind of giants, and that this pink salt looks a lot like flesh and blood.
Exactly. So these are present in the Himalayan mountains, and there are many different mountains in Himalayas that actually looks like a giant that's fallen. So it literally has the shape of an actual giant itself. And they started breaking down these mountains in order to dig and see what they find out inside. And they discovered that there are Himalayan salt that's present inside these mountains. And this is basically what the Himalayan salt looks like. So they just go in there, they start mining, getting a chunk of the salt, and then they convert that into salt that's being sold out there in retail. But this is apparently what it looks like. It looks exactly like a human meat for some reason.
From a being.
On petrified giants, whatever happened to them most probably happened fast and simultaneously. Now, do I believe that they are 100% petrified? And the answer is yes and no. If giants are real, like the Bible, Dead Sea Scrolls, and other literature
that looks like a face.
They were not born of the same flesh like me and you, so I think they were only stopped but not destroyed. And these pink salt mines and these flesh-looking stones are part of their bodies harvested from the earth. And for us to deny the similarities that this was once...
That literally looks like a meat, man. This is basically how I get my chickens. That looks so much like a meat.
Some living tissue. When pictures and video show...
Wow.
Layer...
Wow. Oh my God. This is exactly how a proper pork chop looks like. Like, look at this stuff, man. This is like the muscle, and then there's like perfect fat area that just adds in. And just take a look at what an actual meat would look like. And this is what they found out in the Himalayan salt that we are... And this is what they found out once they cut down these mountains. They actually look exactly like the meat itself.
By layer, the truth.
That is insane. We've also got another video right here.
I'm pretty sure these salt mines are dead giants. Y'all cannot tell me these salt mines are not dead giants. Bruh, this looks like chunks of meat.
Man.
Are y'all kidding?
Wow, this is like the perfect example right here. This right here is like the upper skin, and then we've got like the fat, and then we've got like the full meat, like the muscle part in here. And no wonder it tastes salty, man, because this is what Himalayan salt is all about. We're probably consuming the giants in the name of salt.
Me right now. This looks like bacon or pork chops.
Exactly.
This is salt from the mine. This looks like blood. Look at it. Look. This looks like the inside of a body.
Now, I went on to Google and I tried to find out what the actual Himalayan salts look like once they extract it. And would you believe it if I said that this was not a chunk of pork meat? This is actual Himalayan salt. And this literally is what it looks like. And this right here is another image of what the Himalayan salt looks like. There are like each layers of like these flesh that are being formed. And obviously these giants were not born as us humans, right? So that's probably why their bodies were not like completely decayed. And that is because they were born when humans and angels mated, when the fallen angels mated. So that's basically how these things were created, and probably why their bodies were never decayed, but then they were dead. This right here is another image. This literally looks like a juicy pork steak, man. And this right here is how the Himalayan salts are like harvested, and apparently they just keep mining inside these mountains, and it looks like an actual body of a giant, and basically trying to extract these salts. And tell me how this does not look like inside of a being that has been alive, like an actual body itself. Now, there is also a mountain which actually has a pathway that looks like a massive giant was just fallen, in which the entire city was built on.
If you needed further proof,
look at this stuff,
that we live on the remains of a much larger past.
Wow, this is what the Himalayan salt mountains look like.
It's nothing more than hardened biology. Let's take a look at where a trendy and popular ingredient you might have in your cabinet came from. Himalayan salt. You tell me what these caves look like. Let's take a look at some of that salt.
The best part about these Himalayan salt are like they kind of just have a glow to it. Look at that stuff. They kind of glow in the dark. I don't know why.
Taken out of these mines and collected into a pile.
Wow. Look at these things, man. They look like a chunk of meat being sold out.
Now, do those not look like slabs of meat or what? Here's a closer picture of one. How about now? If pork ribs aren't your cut of choice, don't worry. There's many.
No freaking way. Is this like the Himalayan salt? Wow.
The other cuts to choose from here. In the right conditions, after a great flood-like event, buried and covered in sediment, these petrified beings became the new mountains and hillsides of this realm. If you aren't convinced, let's do a few more side-by-sides. You got rock and meat. One of my favorites, you got bacon.
That is bacon.
And you got bacon rock. History is nothing more than a set of lies agreed upon. And the same goes for most all of academia. The truth.
This is the Himalayan salt that they just cut down into blocks. That looks like a chunk of meat that's being cut down.
In the hillsides and in the mountains, hidden in plain sight. Question everything, friends. Until next time.
That is true, man. I think we should actually start questioning each and everything that happens around the world. And it seems like someone is just trying to keep us in the silence. They don't want us to know the truth. We have just found what is known to be the biblical trees that existed before the Great Flood. And these are the trees that God intended to cut it down so that the giants don't use the tree in order to escape the great Noah's flood. Now take a look at this right here.
This is a giant tree cut down by the angels. God made multiple giant trees like this.
Wow.
But he had to cut them down because he was going to flood the earth, and the angels and the giants were going to try to hide on these trees. So therefore he had to cut them down with angels. And that's what he did.
Now, before we dive into like the actual story of this tree and how this was cut into half, let's take a look at this footage right here.
This is a giant tree that angels cut down in the name of the Lord, so that way the Nephilim could not hide when Noah's, the floods came, and they were going to try to hide up on top of these trees and get away from the flood. And there's multiple other trees just like this all around the world, but they don't want to admit that. because Satan rules this world, and it brings you back to Christ. You read the Bible, the book of Enoch, it all talks about this stuff, but they don't want you to know this.
A huge shout out to Ryan Murphy on Instagram for making this video. And apparently there are many trees that was actually cut down by the angels that God sent down to earth before like the great flood, the Noah's flood, because it seems like the giants, the Nephilims who lived on earth, were capable enough to climb this massive tree and probably survive the great flood. Now what's funny is that obviously our government, being the government, they named this place as the Devil's Tower for some reason. And the government obviously says that this is just a mountain. What's interesting is that there are plenty of different sites that looks exactly the same way, and it actually looks like a chunk of tree that's been cut down. And if you actually take a look at the size of this thing, it was at least supposed to be about 2 miles all the way up in the sky, and that's how huge these trees were before it was cut down. And this right here is another image so that you guys can take a look at what it actually looked like and tell me that this doesn't look like an actual tree that is intentionally being sawed down. Now this is basically what the site looks like, and if you compare this with like an actual chunk of wood, this is how the roots of an actual tree looks like. And the best example that I can give is that if you take a look at this tree that's been cut down, this looks exactly as what this mountain looks like, and it is massive in size, and it was also mentioned in the scriptures of Enoch. Now unfortunately the scriptures of Enoch were not included in the Bible because back in those times the Jews, the Christians, they were not very pleased to hear some of the things that was mentioned in the book of Enoch, and they did not want to include those things in the Bible itself. Some of the things that were said in the book of Enoch is actually crazy because it talks about the angels, it talks about the great Noah's flood and what happened during those floods and before the flood. Now guys, take a look at this image right here. Tell me, how in the world does it even look like it's just a mountain? It's a very clear representation of what an actual tree would have looked like. And this right here is like the stiffness of the roots of the tree that just went all the way up, but then it was cut down, it was sawn down perfectly as though it was done very intentionally by someone. Now in the book of Enoch, it actually says that the angels were sent by God in order to cut down the giant trees before the great Noah's flood happened. And this right here is another image of what the tree actually looks like. If it was fully grown all the way up above, it is said to be about 2 miles that's going to be growing all the way up in the air. So that's a massive tree, to be honest. And if this tree was not cut down, the giants might have probably used the tree in order to climb it up and survive the great flood. And according to the scriptures, that's why God decided to cut it down. Now there is also another mountain, which the government claims that it is just a mountain, it's not a tree. Now of course, everything that's run in this world is run by Satan, so he obviously wouldn't want us to know about the truth of this world and the scriptures that's already been said. So the government claims that this is just an average mountain. Now if you take a close look at this, and you actually even have those tree marks right here, like all of these circular wooden marks that keeps appearing, and obviously over thousands of years, if a wood just stays in a single place, the environment is obviously going to be covering up the wood, and it's going to change its properties, and it's going to look more like a forest. Now for example, this is basically what a cut down tree looks like. If you go close up to a tree stump, this is basically what it looks like. It looks like a bunch of mountains, and it looks like there is a massive jungle that's overgrown on this mountain. But this is just a stump of a tree that's been cut down for hundreds of years. Now imagine a tree that was cut down before the pre-flood era, which is thousands of years from now, and tell me, how can this not be the tree that is mentioned in the scriptures? Now there are of course many different sites that actually looks like a massive tree was cut down. One of these examples that I actually came across on Twitter, if you cut down 2 trees that are like overgrown between each other, this is basically what it's going to look like. And that's exactly what these mountains look like as well, which, you know, people actually believe that these are just mountains. And we've got another tree that's been cut down all the way near the roots, and look at this mountain right here. It's been cut down, it's been sliced down in a perfect shape. The same goes on for this one as well. And down here we also have another mountain which also looks like it's been sliced down. And apparently if you go up on the close-up surface of these trees, that the structure has a very close resemblance of what an actual chunk of tree would look like. It has some sort of a honeycomb structure, if you take a close look at what it actually looks like, that are formed above the tree where it was like completely flattened, cut down. And this is one of the reasons as to why many people believe that these were not just some random mountains, and these were the trees that actually existed before the Noah's flood. Take a look at a couple of these images that we've got. There are plenty of different trees where now people are starting to question everything that the government is trying to hide from us. Doesn't this look like the roots of the tree that's like all the way underneath, and then there's like a massive tree that was supposed to be grown, but then it was perfectly chopped down for some reason. All of these looks like it was perfectly chopped down. There is no freaking way this is just a random mountain, and they named it as the Devil's Tower. And this is one of the best ones out there. There is no way anybody out there could say that this is just a random mountain. But obviously they don't want us to know the truth, which is why they haven't been revealing the actual reality of what's going on in the world. They haven't really accepted or mentioned this out there in the public that these are eventually the trees. Like, look at these roots, man. It literally looks like an actual tree. But then the truth is all over the world, but then they just don't show it in the actual social media, or they don't really get to show this on the main news channels. Somebody is trying to hide the truth from us people, and I think we know who that somebody is. And it's very important that we start questioning each and everything that they've been hiding from us. Like Antarctica, for example, and also a part of Great Canyon, which we are not allowed to go ahead and explore for whatever reason that is. It's not because it's dangerous. There are many different parts of the world that's dangerous, but why does the government not allow us to go ahead and explore these locations? What are they hiding in there that they are so afraid that we might eventually find out, due to which they're not allowing any of us humans to even enter that restricted areas? Because that obviously comes down to freedom. If they want to go down and explore Antarctica, I think we should actually have the freedom in order to do so. But then for some reason, they will literally shoot you down if you enter the borders of Antarctica using a boat or a plane. You're just literally not allowed to go in there. So what kind of things are these people hiding? Basically leaves us to such a conclusion that we should actually start questioning many things, that they have been falsely lying to us for all these years. Because just imagine what would happen if people will eventually find out, if the entire world finds out and they realize that the scriptures in the Bible was actually the truth, and whatever we know so far is all just bunch of garbage and lies that was being fed to us from all these years. Imagine if everybody in this world finds that out, then this would lead to a massive outbreak where nobody is going to be trusting the government. Nobody is going to live anymore in a slave mindset, and the world would basically change and start following God and the scriptures, and they would actually start worshiping God instead of living according to the rules that these people have set so far, because they are probably trying to keep us silent and try to just make us live in a slave mindset. And that's basically what's going on for all these thousands of years. And that is also why they want to just keep us in control, and they don't want us to know the actual truth. And I strongly believe that we should actually start questioning each and everything that we see, and maybe whatever we see in the news, maybe whatever the scientists are saying, those are not the real truth. The scriptures are actually the real truth, and they're just trying to hide it by just labeling each and everything that's in the nature as science and giving some sort of a bullshit explanation to each and everything that we see that happens in a very natural way. They always have some sort of an explanation to each and everything so that we can basically forget what the scriptures are reminding us of. We have just found what is known to be the biblical trees that existed before the Great Flood. And these are the trees that God intended to cut it down so that the giants don't use the tree in order to escape the great Noah's flood. Now take a look at this right here.
This is a giant tree cut down by the angels. God made multiple giant trees like this.
Wow.
But he had to cut them down because he was going to flood the earth, and the angels and the giants were going to try to hide on these trees. So therefore he had to cut them down with angels. And that's what he did.
Now, before we dive into like the actual story of this tree and how this was cut into half, let's take a look at this footage right here.
This is a giant tree that angels cut down in the name of the Lord, so that way the Nephilim could not hide when Noah's, the floods came, and they were going to try to hide up on top of these trees and get away from the flood. And there's multiple other trees just like this all around the world, but they don't want to admit that because Satan rules this world, and it brings you back to Christ. You read the Bible, the book of Enoch, it all talks about this stuff, but they don't want you to know this.
A huge shout out to Ryan Murphy on Instagram for making this video. And apparently there are many trees that was actually cut down by the angels that God sent down to earth before like the great flood, the Noah's flood, because it seems like the giants, the Nephilims who lived on earth, were capable enough to climb this massive tree and probably survive the great flood. Now what's funny is that obviously our government, being being the government, they named this place as the Devil's Tower for some reason. And the government obviously says that this is just a mountain. What's interesting is that there are plenty of different sites that looks exactly the same way, and it actually looks like a chunk of tree that's been cut down. And if you actually take a look at the size of this thing, it was at least supposed to be about 2 miles all the way up in the sky, and that's how huge these trees were before it was cut down. And this right here is another image so that you guys can take a look at what it actually looked like and tell me that this doesn't look like an actual tree that is intentionally being sawed down. Now this is basically what the site looks like, and if you compare this with like an actual chunk of wood, this is how the roots of an actual tree looks like. And the best example that I can give is that if you take a look at this tree that's been cut down, this looks exactly as what this mountain looks like, and it is massive in size, and it was also mentioned in the scriptures of Enoch. Now unfortunately, the scriptures of Enoch were not included in the Bible because back in those times, the Jews and the Christians, they were not very pleased to hear some of the things that was mentioned in the book of Enoch, and they did not want to include those things in the Bible itself. Some of the things that were said in the book of Enoch is actually crazy because it talks about the angels, it talks about the great Noah's flood and what happened during those floods and before the flood. Now guys, take a look at this image right here. Tell me, how in the world does it even look like it's just a mountain? It's a very clear representation of what an actual tree would have looked like. And this right here is like the stiffness of the roots of the tree that just went all the way up, but then it was cut down, it was sawn down perfectly as though it was done very intentionally by someone. Now in the book of Enoch, it actually says that the angels were sent by God in order to cut down the giant trees before the great Noah's flood happened. And this right here is another image of what the tree actually looks like. If it was fully grown all the way up above, it is said to be about 2 miles that's going to be growing all the way up in the air. So that's a massive tree, to be honest. And if this tree was not cut down, the giants might have probably used the tree in order to climb it up and survive the great flood. And according to the scriptures, that's why God decided to cut it down. Now there is also another mountain, which the government claims that it is just a mountain, it's not a tree. Now of course, everything that's run in this world is run by Satan, so he obviously wouldn't want us to know about the truth of this world and the scriptures that's already been said. So the government claims that this is just an average mountain. Now if you take a close look at this, and you actually even have those tree marks right here, like all of these circular wooden marks that keeps appearing, and obviously over thousands of years, if a wood just stays in a single place, the environment is obviously going to be covering up the wood, and it's going to change its properties, and it's going to look more like a forest. Now for example, this is basically what a cut down tree looks like. If you go close up to a tree stump, this is basically what it looks like. It looks like a bunch of mountains, and it looks like there is a massive jungle that's overgrown on this mountain. But this is just a stump of a tree that's been cut down for hundreds of years. Now imagine a tree that was cut down before the pre-flood era, which is thousands of years from now, and tell me, how can this not be the tree that is mentioned in the scriptures? Now there are of course many different sites that actually looks like a massive tree was cut down. One of these examples that I actually came across on Twitter, if you cut down 2 trees that are like overgrown between each other, this is basically what it's going to look like. And that's exactly what these mountains look like as well, which, you know, people actually believe that these are just mountains. And we've got another tree that's been cut down all the way near the roots, and look at this mountain right here. It's been cut down, it's been sliced down in a perfect shape. The same goes on for this one as well. And down here we also have another mountain which also looks like it's been sliced down. And apparently if you go up on the close-up surface of these trees, that the structure has a very close resemblance of what an actual chunk of tree would look like. It has some sort of a honeycomb structure, if you take a close look at what it actually looks like, that are formed above the tree where it was like completely flattened, cut down. And this is one of the reasons as to why many people believe that these were not just some random mountains, and these were the trees that actually existed before the Noah's flood. Take a look at a couple of these images that we've got. There are plenty of different trees where now people are starting to question everything that the government is trying to hide from us. Doesn't this look like the roots of the tree that's like all the way underneath, and then there's like a massive tree that was supposed to be grown, but then it was perfectly chopped down for some reason? All of these looks like it was perfectly chopped down. There is no freaking way this is just a random mountain, and they named it as the Devil's Tower. And this is one of the best ones out there. There is no way anybody out there could say that this is just a random mountain. But obviously they don't want us to know the truth, which is why they haven't been revealing the actual reality of what's going on in the world. They haven't really accepted or mentioned this out there in the public that these are eventually the trees. Like, look at these roots, man. It literally looks like an actual tree. Also, take a look at this amazing footage right here of this location, and it looks like some sort of a dragon's mouth or maybe a massive giant snake's mouth. I don't know what it is, but there are teeth that are coming out of this mountain. Take a look at this stuff. And they just want us to believe that these are just mountains, man. That's the craziest part. Look at this stuff. The theory of the petrified giants. Look at this stuff. This literally looks like an actual teeth, right? Now, some people believe that this whole thing, they could have just carved it out later, you know? But at the same time, the shape of this whole mountain, it kind of just looks like a snake's head. That's basically what it looks like to me.
I took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. This blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this? I said, it's the blood of your Messiah.
Well, this is Mount Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified 2,000 years ago. And if you remember the details mentioned in the Bible, then you'll know that when Jesus was crucified, there was a massive earthquake right at the moment of crucifixion, which led the Mount Golgotha to have massive cracks right underneath the exact location in which the crucifixion cross of Jesus was placed.
According to biblical accounts, the crucifixion of Christ caused an earthquake, splitting the rock of Golgotha. Remarkably, the fractured rock is still visible behind the altar in this chapel.
Now, 2,000 years later, we discovered that the blood of Christ during the crucifixion was actually draining all the way down the wooden cross, and right when the earthquake happened, apparently the mountain split and created this massive crack, which led the blood to basically drain all the way down deep inside this mountain.
That during the crucifixion, Christ's blood flowed down the crack, reaching the remains of Adam below. Observe the red veins on the rock of Golgotha in the chapel of Adam, symbolizing the precious blood of Jesus Christ.
There's this archaeologist named Ron Viet who basically dug up this mountain, and he discovered that there's a massive cave that goes all the way underneath the Mount Golgotha, the place where Jesus was crucified. Now, while the archaeologist Ron Viet and his team were digging through the tunnels, they discovered that right underneath the place in which Jesus Christ was crucified was also the Ark of the Covenant, which is mentioned in the Bible. Well, Ron Viet claims, and he also has this picture that he shared. Apparently, he claims that this is the original Ark of the Covenant, which Aaron and the Israelites, upon the commandment of Moses and God, they decided to build this Ark of Covenant by melting gold. So apparently, this artifact is now sitting right below the location of where Jesus was crucified. Now, luckily, what happened 2,000 years later is that Ron Viet discovered that during this earthquake, apparently there was this massive crack which led all the way down towards this cave, and the blood of Jesus was dripping all the way straight down into the cave, and some of the blood of the Messiah was also spilled on the Ark of the Covenant, which basically has a lot of symbolic representation, because the Ark of the Covenant was supposed to be the symbol of God himself, because his 10 commandments are sitting inside of this Ark of the Covenant box. So the sacrificial lamb, who is supposed to be Jesus, his blood was basically covering above the Ark of the Covenant. Now, some of the details that Ron Viet basically shares about what he discovered is just absolutely crazy, because not only did they find the blood of Jesus, but they also took samples of this blood and took the blood to the Israeli Research and Laboratory Center. And what results were found by testing this blood is basically going to be blowing your mind away. Take a look at what Ron Viet has to say
I
here.
took the blood into a laboratory in Israel. I just said, please examine this blood and tell me what you can tell me about it. So I was back there. They took it out, examined it under microscope, and the one technician called the other one over there, and then they called the boss over there, and they were talking Hebrew a mile a minute there for a little bit.
They were
and
confused.
They looked at me and they said, Mr. Wyatt, this human blood only has 24 chromosomes in it. Everybody else has 46. You see, 23 from your mother, 23 from your father. Then they said, this blood is alive. And then they said, whose blood is this?
Wow.
I said, it's the blood of your Messiah.
Wow. So apparently Ron Viet took this blood sample from the cave that he was digging, and he said that the blood was dripping all the way down on top of the Ark of the Covenant. So he says that the Ark of the Covenant is still inside of this cave, which is right underneath the place where Jesus was crucified. And when he took the samples, the most fascinating discovery is not just the blood itself, but the fact that the blood only has 23 chromosomes instead of 46, which is basically how all human beings are supposed to have. So let's go ahead and ask the AI on how many chromosomes are there in a human, and apparently the answer to that says the white blood cells are supposed to have 46 chromosomes, and in a typical human male they're supposed to have 46 chromosomes, which are different slightly from the female ones, where 46 refers to both mother and father combined together. So apparently you're supposed to have 23 from your mother and 23 from your father, and the blood that they found, it only has 24 chromosomes. It's one extra chromosome, which is basically known as the sex determination chromosome, which either makes you a male or a female, whatever it is. But the fact that the blood never had any chromosomes of the father itself makes it so much clearer that this blood was indeed the blood of Jesus. And the fact that it's still alive after 2,000 years, they were able to go ahead and collect a sample of this blood, the dry blood, and put the blood into some of the saline and dilute it for 72 hours, which basically made the blood come back to life. And they were able to test this whole thing out. And to be honest, I'm so thankful to the amount of science and technology that we have in current generation that we are able to go ahead and do all of these, different tests and see for ourselves that some of the histories and some of the biblical facts that are out there in the Bible is indeed true. Because without all of these scientific evidence, I don't think people are going to be believing in these stuff. I mean, keeping Christians aside, of course, we believe it because we have a lot of faith in God. But for people who are new to this stuff, who don't really want to conclude themselves as someone that believes in God, they might really need different types of proofs, although the universe itself is a proof. But some people, they don't really understand things very clearly until the science proves it. But now it's very clear that the science itself has officially proven that they have found the blood of Jesus Christ. And this was found by Ron Viet in 1981. There's also a few other details that you guys should know, so I'm going to show you a couple of videos which gives you a brief explanation on how and what they exactly found when they dug inside the mountain in which Jesus was crucified. Let's take a look at this video.
Rock of Golgotha. Right where Jesus was crucified, there is a cave. In this cave, explorer Ron Wyatt claims to have found the real Ark of the Covenant. What's so incredible about this discovery is
Look at this right here. So this was the image that Ron Viet shared. Apparently, this is exactly what the Ark of the Covenant looks like. And it was all the way underneath the cave. And right above this, as you can see, there's like a massive crack that's opened right over here. So this crack is where the blood of Jesus was basically dripping down from the cross. And this was led because of the earthquake that happened. And it's also mentioned in the Bible that when the earthquake happened, there was a massive crack that was formed on the mountain in which he was crucified. And 2,000 years later, we humans in the near future are able to go ahead and testify and find out the truth using technology and science.
Exactly where the ark was placed, there was a crack leading up to the spot where Jesus was crucified. Not only that, but there was a red trail of dried blood leading from the crucifixion site down onto the ark, which is thought to be the real blood of Jesus.
We put an amount of this blood in some normal saline and at body temperature, and we swirled this gently for 72 hours. When we put this in a growth medium, the white blood cells were dividing. We were able to get a chromosome count. There were 24 chromosomes. 23 Christ got from Mary. He got one, which was the sex determinant, or the Y, from his heavenly Father, for a total of 24. All of us have 46. We get 23 from our mother and 23 from our father. Now, this blood, folks, was still alive after almost 2,000 years.
That's the fascinating
The people that did the test thought I had pulled a fast one of some kind on them. Never in their lives have they ever seen any dried blood that was still alive.
And also Ron Viet basically explains on what he saw when he discovered the Ark of the Covenant. And apparently it was not humans. They were these supernatural angels that God had assigned for them to just stand right there so that no humans can get their hands on this artifact. So apparently the angels were guarding it. And Ron Viet says that he asked these angels for permission to simply just take a picture of the Ark of the Covenant. And they gave him the permission in order to do so. But he also describes what kind of creatures they were and what exactly were their powers and how they look like. And it's just crazy. I think you guys should take a look at this video as well.
The Ark of the Covenant was discovered, and they didn't want you to know.
The fourth time I came in, there were 4 young men standing in there. One of them said, "We're the angels that have been assigned to the Ark of the Covenant."
In 1982, a man named Ron Wyatt claimed to have discovered the Ark of the Covenant, buried in a cave 20 feet beneath the place where Jesus was crucified. Wyatt said that during the crucifixion, an earthquake split the rock beneath Jesus' cross, causing his blood to run down through.
Look at that. So this is basically how it happened, right? There's the cross, and then the earthquake split it open, and the blood just falls all the way down here. And this right here is where Ron Viet and his team was digging deep down into this cave, and they found the Ark of the Covenant right here, and also the blood that dripped down
through the crack and land on the mercy seat of the Ark. He claimed to have taken a sample of the blood, which was later allegedly analyzed in an Israeli laboratory. But this is where it gets scary. Wyatt claimed that the laboratory found the blood to be unique, containing only 24 chromosomes instead of the usual 46, which he believed was proof of a virgin birth. He also said that when he tested the blood, he was shocked to see that it was still alive under the microscope. A declassified CIA document claims the Ark of the Covenant was located using remote...
Look at this stuff. Look at this stuff. This is the only picture that we have as far as what Ron Viet has claimed that this is the Ark of the Covenant. It looks crazy, but I don't know who's guarding it. We really can't see the angels in the picture.
Remote viewing, a method where individuals use extrasensory perception to see distant places. The report states the Ark is real.
So this is apparently the CIA report that basically states that the Ark of the Covenant was found. And it says that the target is a container. This container has another container inside of it, and the target is fashioned of wood, gold, and silver. The target is similar in shape to AOL, a coffin, and is decorated with seraphim. See sketches on page number 16. Now, this target is located somewhere in the Middle East, as language spoken by the individual present seemed to be Arabic. So visuals of surrounding buildings indicate that the presence of mosques and domes, and the individuals in the area were clothed in virtually all white and had black hair and dark eyes. One figure I homed in on was wearing a mustache. Now, this target is hidden underground in a dark and wet, as well as all aspects of the locations of the target were classified back then, but now it's been declassified. Now, the purpose of this target is to bring people together. It has something to do with ceremony, memory, homage, the resurrection. So they basically did confirm that it has to do something with the resurrection, which basically testifies for Jesus. So these are the CIA documents. Keep that in mind. There is an aspect of spirituality, information, lessons, and historical knowledge far beyond what we know as of now. And the target is protected by entities. Now, this is where things gets interesting. Can only be opened now by those who are authorized to do so. Now, this container will not and cannot be opened until the time is deemed right. Once it is time to open the container, the mechanics of the lock system will be found to be fairly simple. Now, the individuals opening the container by prying or striking are going to be destroyed by the container's protectors through the use of power that is unknown to us humans. That's just crazy. So apparently this is what the CIA document says. Let me just go ahead and show you guys the approval right here. This is the CIA document number. So if you want to go ahead and check this out for yourself, type this number in and you will be able to see the previously classified, which is now declassified, CIA document, or you will be able to read this whole thing for yourself. And apparently this right here is protected by some sort of an angel, as far as what Ron Viet claims. I mean, take a look at this video right here. This is the most important one where Ron Viet explains on what the angels actually look like.
But anyway, when I walked in, there were 4 angels standing in the chamber, and they looked just like people on the street. When I saw them, I was rather stunned, and I was going to ask, how did you get in here, or something to that effect, but I found I couldn't move or talk or nothing.
So they basically looked exactly like humans? Didn't they have wings or whatever?
Like that. So one of them instructed me to set up my video camera and aim it at the Ark of the Covenant. They went over, each took a corner of the mercy seat, lifted it up, and said, take the tables of stone out of the Ark of the Covenant. God wants everyone to see those. So I went over and I took it out. I wasn't able to move until he told me to do these things. And so they put the lid back on, or the mercy seat back on. I stood there with the tables of stone. I didn't know what to do with them. The angel came and took them and put them on a shelf in the side of the chamber there. Behind the Ark of the Covenant, the whole wall is the most beautiful crystal I have ever, I couldn't even imagine it. The colors of the rainbow are rippling in all directions behind it.
Wow, that's crazy. The fact that he was able to see inside of what the Ark of the Covenant is.
I mean, it is mind-boggling. And I know that God, it's going to be there. I was told, and specifically what law, but people aren't ready to hear that yet. Men are working on a religious law that will require you and me to break God's 10 Commandments. When that law is passed, is when the tables of stone are to be put on public display, and people are to be made aware that God requires us to keep those 10 Commandments, all right? And that's when it will be shown. Now, I went to my hotel, I looked in the viewfinder, played back my video to make sure I had it, and then it struck me, where am I going to keep this? Where can I keep it that it'll be safe? So I took it and I went back in the chamber, and I mumbled something. I meant to say, I don't know where I can keep this safe. The angel took it and laid it on the tables of stone. So I have no access to the video of that until they're ready. Every time I'm here, I come and check, folks, to see if I can do it. Right? I suspect strongly that these laws were probably already formulated for that.
So apparently from what this man has shared so far, he also took like a full-on video of the whole thing, of even the angels, and apparently he did not know what to do with it because the video itself was so powerful. If it gets out to the wrong hands, I don't know what kind of stuff could happen. So he was afraid of what's going to happen. So he went back into the cave the next day, and he was asking the angels and what he's supposed to do because he doesn't know what to do with the footage. And the angels just took the tape and they kept it on the table, and they said that when the time is right, people will see this. They will get to watch it. NASA just took a picture of a new star, which they now codenamed the star as MYCN 18. And this is basically what the star looks like. And according to NASA's report, they have now mentioned that this star exists about 8,000 light years away from Earth. Now, what's actually interesting about the star's visual, it surprisingly looks very, very similar to the angel that's been mentioned in the scriptures of the Bible and Quran and many different scriptures. And this biblical angel is called a seraphim. Now this right here is a side-by-side comparison of what the seraphim that's mentioned in the scriptures of the Bible looks extremely similar to what NASA basically just reported. As you can see, the Bible states that the center point of the angel actually has a massive eye-like structure, and above it and below it and from the sides, it's just filled with massive wings. And these wings in the biblical scriptures, these wings kind of just shine extremely bright, and that's exactly what's happening in here as well. And as you can see, there seems to be like a green colored eye, and then we also have like a tiny eyeball in between. And as it states, beyond its scientific marvel, many observers have found a profound resemblance in MYCN 18, which now it's a glowing wings and central core, which evoke the form of an angel, which is named as the seraphim, which is a sparkling reflection on creation and divine beauty. Now, while not a scientist claims that the angelic appearance of MYCN 18 deeply resonates with many Christians and many people that actually believe in the scriptures. Now, according to NASA's report, it seems like this star is apparently 8,000 light years away, and to behold the breathtaking MCYN 18, famously known as the engraved hourglass nebula. Now this was captured by NASA's Hubble Space Telescope in 1996, and this cosmic wonder continues to inspire. Now what makes the MYCN 18 so unique? Well, this planetary nebula formed from the expelled gas of a dying star showcases a remarkably symmetrical hourglass shape with intricate details never seen before, a true masterpiece of the cosmos. Well, to be honest here, I don't think it's just some sort of a random star that just got created from dust and whatsoever, because I just think that NASA, we obviously know there is a lot of deception going on. They don't really give us like the actual full information. They always try to give us some sort of a scientific theory that is completely opposite of what the scriptures actually teach us, because the scripture says that the stars are indeed the angels, but then obviously NASA still doesn't have any kind of proof. They haven't been to stars, they haven't really seen anything close up. The only thing that NASA basically states is that they have a telescope and they just look at these stars and they start publishing scientific theories. Now there is always a massive difference between scientific facts and scientific theories. Now theories are nothing but just having a wild guess, where we are expecting that maybe it is what it is, but then we don't really have an exact proof of what it actually is, because we really can't go to the stars at this point. But then what NASA really fails in doing is that they never really accept the scriptures, nor do they even have anything that's pointing out of the scriptures, whereas everything that they've been finding or seeing in the telescopes, it has a very, very good resemblance to what the scriptures in the Bible states. But then they really want to give their own explanation with their own scientific made-up theories. But there's also another star which actually resembles another angel that's mentioned in the Bible, known as the Ophanim. And this right here is apparently what the star looks like. And a woman just filmed it, and she was just trying to talk to the star. For some reason, it kind of just starts reacting. Just take a look at this one.
Can you hear me? Jesus loves me.
And then it just starts reacting for some reason.
Oh, you know Jesus. You know Jesus. Jesus is awesome, isn't he?
And someone actually made a 3D animation of what these angels mentioned in the Bible actually looks like. And this apparently is the angel, which is supposed to be looking like the star that we just witnessed. And before that, As you can see, there are supposed to be plenty of different eyes, and there are massive eye in between, and then it has like a wheel-like structure, and that's exactly what we also got to see. And if you look at this one right here, it also has like a very similar kind of traits where it has like the ring things, and then it starts reacting with the name whatsoever. Now, the first angel, Seraphim, that we actually took a look at previously is apparently supposed to look like this from the biblical descriptions, where it has a massive eye in between, which is blue in color, and then which is bluish green in color, and then they have like a massive wings or something that is completely fiery, and as you can see, there are like particles of fire going through the wings, and apparently this is basically what it's supposed to look like. And if you compare that with what image that NASA has just shared, I think it has a lot of similarities. Just take a look at this one right here. This is like the NASA's image, the green eyes, and it kind of has a lot of similarities. And of course, people are just making these stuff up, but it actually is amazing that we are eventually getting to see all these things up in the sky, and all you need is a telescope or probably a Nikon P1000 camera, which I've heard is pretty good when it comes to like zooming capabilities. Or you can also use a Samsung phone where you can just simply zoom in and you'll eventually get to see many of these stars. And I actually think that it is finally time that we start exposing NASA for the things that they're currently doing, because it seems like they're just trying to make people believe that there is no firmament and that we should have more faith in man than God himself. Because as you've seen, there are there are plenty of proofs out there which basically proves that the firmament is indeed real. And one of the greatest evidence that we have so far, this new rocket launch, which is done by SpaceX. If you take a close look at what's actually going on, SpaceX released a rocket which is trying to get to the space, but apparently it ended up exposing the firmament to all the people around the world, because the rocket ends up hitting the firmament which is present above the earth, and it tries to penetrate through the firmament, and then it breaks, and you can basically see the water just splashing around. And that's basically what the firmament is made of. There's like massive water on the other side of the firmament, and as you can see, the rocket keeps going up and up ahead, and there's only a certain limit that the rocket can obviously reach. But then, they keep lying to us about them reaching space or whatsoever. But I think it's all bullshit, because at the end of the day, the real truth is all present in here, right here, and that's one of the reasons. Now, as you can keep seeing the rocket, it's gonna reach like the level of the firmament, and it's going to just penetrate through it. And look at that. Right there, it starts reaching the level of firmament, and it starts splitting up. Look at that. It starts hitting the firmament right here. And right now, it splits up into two halves because it's broken. And this part, look at this part. It tries to penetrate through the firmament right here. It's trying to penetrate through it, but it just can't do it. It can't do it. Look at this stuff. It's still going. It's still trying to penetrate it. And boom, there we go. There we go. And then it blows up, and you can actually see the water basically scattering all around. And that happened. This literally happened with SpaceX, and they basically just proved to us that firmament is indeed real. And also, if you look at the sun, for whatever reason, you get like this reflection of the sun in all different directions. And that is also only possible if there's some sort of a, glass-like firmament that's like covering up the sun inside. It just makes a lot of sense if there's like a glass that's present above it. And what's actually interesting is that the Antichrist is basically trying to make us believe more into human technology and make us believe that whatever we humans and NASA is basically trying to say is the real truth. So they even, collected a lot of celebrities, and they just faked and orchestrated this whole situation where they just made it seem like they went to space and they came back. But obviously we all knew that it was all fake. They never went to space. And it's all just a made up staged act. And you can actually take a look at this video right here.
It was literally meant to be an antichrist movement to make people believe in man. It's a fact. I'm going to show you guys. It's like, you can look this up anywhere. Look up Jack Parsons and the Apollo program. They just wanted people to believe in scientific advancement. The guy who created the Apollo program was this guy, Jack Parsons. Can you pull up this clip, Skylar? This is from a podcast, the Science History Institute Museum and Library.
So basically, Katy Perry was sent into space for some reason. It was all just orchestrated, where later everything got exposed that it seems like it was all just fake. They just filmed this whole stuff just to make people believe that, yes, we people at NASA, we do go to space. And these celebrities, they did go to space and they're back on Earth using this pod. I just think it's all just full of BS, man, at this point. It just seems like nothing is true. They're just making this whole stuff up, whole staged act, just to make us believe that, whatever these guys are telling is the truth. But at the end of the day, it seems like we're all just being deceived, and we should always stay careful as to what we believe on the internet. This right here is the Nazarene inscription tablet, which is now held as one of the only artifacts that could prove the resurrection of Christ. Well, back in time when Rome was in charge, apparently it seems like Rome introduced a new law, where usually robbing graves were known to be a crime, and if you were ever caught robbing a grave, then you had to pay a fine for your crimes. But there was no bigger punishment for grave robbing other than just paying a crime and then you're free to go, until this very day when the Emperor of Rome decided to change the rules for some very weird reason. And this right here is known as the Nazarene inscription tablet. Now, this is the one and only artifact that we humans currently possess, which gives us a solid evidence of how the Emperor Caesar of Rome had set a new rule in Nazareth and Galilee, the particular time period when Jesus was crucified, where this rule states that Rome issued a death decree over an empty tomb, and history just cannot explain as to what it was. Now, this right here is basically what the inscription looks like, and this tablet right here, it basically states that the Roman law is now subjected to giving death penalties, not to grave robbers. It's not just about robbing graves anymore. This law was newly introduced just for the body, in case if anyone tries to steal the body, they will be put to death sentence. So that was what this new law is all about. Now, here's an English translation as to what it basically states. Now, a marble tablet summarizes a decree written in the AD 40s, in which the Emperor Claudius singled out Israel and prescribed the death penalty for anyone who's caught stealing a body from a tomb. Now, grave robbers did not just steal bodies, obviously, because back at those times, they would usually go grave robbing just to steal some of these ornaments, golds, and some of the expensive stuff that they might have just put inside the grave with the body. So obviously nobody is out there trying to steal the body itself. So for whatever reason, it seems like the emperor decided to put this new law where he would be giving death penalties for people who steal bodies from grave itself. They usually steal the valuables that was buried with them, but this decree provides a corroboration evidence that the message of Christ's resurrection had created significant controversy in the Roman Empire within just 15 years of the event taking place, and challenging skeptical ideas that resurrection was a result of legendary embellishment over several decades. Now, obviously, we get to understand that, people usually go down there in order to steal some of the valuable items from any dead bodies, but why would an emperor like Caesar himself even be bothered about someone just stealing random bodies from graves and giving them death penalty as a punishment? Because previously, for grave robbing, they only had to pay a fine and they were free to go. But whatever happened in this very small time period, it was very clear that the entire Roman Empire was completely shaken after the rumor of Christ being resurrected was spreading super wide, and Caesar couldn't just hold it back, but he had to put this new law in where he had to give death penalties to people that would steal bodies from the grave. Now, this is where things gets very interesting, because if you've read the Bible, then you would probably know in Matthew chapter 28, verse 11 to 15, it very clearly states that the Roman emperor's reaction to the rumor that Jesus has been resurrected was basically to doubt his disciples, and many people started blaming his disciples, stating that they were the ones that stole the body of Jesus Christ after he was crucified. So if Rome heard that a stolen body was causing religious riot in Christianity, then this would have been the massive cause of issuing a harsh decree to stop it from happening again, specifically in that particular region. Because this whole thing happened in Galilee, in Nazareth, and they had to give out this order in Israel because the word was spreading wide across all nations, and people were actually getting to know about Jesus being resurrected, and people are starting to change their faith. They were starting to believe in Christ and believe that he was indeed Messiah, the Son of God himself. Now, this obviously puts Roman Empire in a very tough situation. If at all, if Jesus turns out to be the one that was resurrected from the dead, then this would basically crumble down the entire Roman Empire. So that was one of the reasons as to why it was believed that the Emperor of Rome himself had to put out this new decree, and he had to put this out in a tablet. It was one of the orders that was given by the Roman Emperor, and back in those times these were put down in some of the tablets, and inscriptions were given out, and it was basically spread across all different cities in Israel to let people know that these were the orders of the Emperor himself, so you're supposed to follow it, and if at all anyone decides to make a body disappear from the grave, then it will be put to death. So now, luckily, after 2,000 years, it seems like one of the private archaeologists, now I can't really say that this person was exactly an archaeologist because that's not exactly what he was. This man right here, Wilhelm Frohner, is the one collector who apparently had the antiquities, and the Department of Archaeologists found out that this so-and-so man was actually having one of the only piece of evidence that would root us back to the resurrection of Christ himself. This could be the one thing that would solidify the entire foundation of believing in the resurrection of Christ himself. Because I know a lot of different religions, including the Muslims, don't believe that Jesus was resurrected. They don't even believe that he was crucified in the first place. But obviously we already have many different proofs and archaeological evidence for Jesus being crucified, but we never really had any sort of evidence for his resurrection. But now we officially do, and apparently this is called as the Nazarene inscription tablet, which was given out by the Emperor of Rome, where, as you can see, it explains that this tablet wasn't dug up by archaeologists. Now, it was found in a private collection with a single handwritten tag which says Dalle di Marbore Envoyi di Nazareth, which stands for a marble slab that was sent from Nazareth. Now, the mystery here is that this was a collector that actually had this tablet with him, but he has no idea on who the founder of this archaeological evidence is. Nobody knows who dug it up, nobody knows who found it, and where they exactly found this archaeological evidence as well. So we don't exactly know on who the founder of this object is. So later, the archaeological department, they decided to send this artifact to the labs in order to test it out and see whether or not if this tablet and the material dates all the way back to the same time period of when Jesus was alive and when he was crucified. And to our surprise, it turns out that this tablet is 100% legit. It dates all the way back to 50 BC to 50 AD. So this is supposed to be the time period as to when these inscriptions were written down in the tablet. So a huge thanks to all of the technology that we possess as of now in this day and age, so that we can basically date back as to how old the particular object is. And I think archaeology has gone in such advancement, and all the archaeological equipments are now allowing us to get a perfect precision of what we're looking at and a perfect explanation of what our history basically talks about. Now, in the stone, there are some very interesting things when they tested out the stone in the lab. Now, apparently it turns out that this stone, this marble in which the Caesar's decree was inscripted, was not a marble that was having any close resemblance to the marbles that was available in Israel, nor even in Saudi Arabia. And when they ran some research, they found out that the material of this marble, it is very similar to the material of the marble that's only available in a Greek island called Kos. So this basically puts us in a lot of confusion, because if Roman Emperor was the one that gave this decree and inscription on a marble, then why isn't the marble from Israel, nor even from Saudi Arabia? And why is this marble coming from a place that's all the way far away from Israel itself? Now, the answer to that, we don't exactly know why it is. Maybe it was some sort of a special marble material that, you know, Caesar wanted to use, that was brought all the way from the Greek island in order to put on this inscription. Now, there is no possible scientific explanation that's kind of backing up this particular thing that science has basically found. But what's very interesting about the inscription is that it specifically talks about a particular way of burial after death. Now, usually when it comes to Roman burial, they kind of just burn bodies, or they just dig the bodies and then put the bodies underneath the ground, usually like what what we do these days. But the kind of burial that's specifically mentioned in these inscriptions is the one which is used by the Jews, where they basically roll in this massive circular stone where they can just roll the stone in order to open it and they can close it back again. So this was the kind of practices that only the Jews used to follow and nobody other than the Jews. And this was the same kind of burial that was used for Jesus Christ as well. And when he was resurrected, the stone was moved and he just walked out of there. Stones were said to be moved by the angels and he basically just walked out of his grave. And that's exactly what's mentioned in the tablet as well. So this basically gives us like a solid proof. So whether or not the material of the tablet is from Israel or Saudi Arabia, even if it is from a very far away Greece island or whatever, this is still a solid proof and evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ. And this basically shook the entire Roman Empire to a point where they had to implement this new law. And this particular law is also mentioned in the Bible. But now we officially get the artifact in order to take a look of what the inscription of the law basically looked like. And a huge thanks to the archaeological department that we now have some very solid proofs in order to strengthen our faith. And for those people who are saying that, well, Jesus was not resurrected, we now finally have the proof for his resurrection. So I really wanted to go ahead and talk about this particular thing and share this whole evidence with my community right here on the channel, because I know it's going to be helping in order to strengthen faith of so many people that have been doubting the resurrection of Christ. Many people, even though if we are believers, sometimes, you know, if we get some of these solid proofs and evidence from science and archaeology, which could strengthen our faith unbelievably stronger, because particularly in times when you're super low or like you've fallen down in life and you just need something in order to believe in God the most, but then you don't really have anything out there. That's exactly why we're making these podcasts and these episodes, which could definitely be bringing out the truth out there to the public eyes, so that people who ever doubt in any of the scriptures that's available in the Bible to be false are now being proven wrong, and we now have an archaeological evidence. So I'm trying my best in order to do my part in bringing out the truth to all of you people. So if you guys could just go ahead, take a few seconds of your valuable time, drop a like on this video and leave any sort of comment. It doesn't really matter what kind of comment it is. If you could just leave any comment, then the YouTube algorithm, it's going to push this video out to as many people as possible, because the algorithm, it basically works in such a way that if the video has more engagements, more comments, more likes, more shares, then it's basically going to put the video out to more people. So more people will get to see the truth, and the more people will learn about Jesus and his resurrection. So your part in doing this very tiny help is going to make a massive difference in order to help save many people that really don't know about the truth. So please guys, go ahead and share this video with as many people as possible. And thank you guys so much that we're heading so close to 400,000 subscribers right now. The family is growing, the whole community is growing, and I'm just so fortunate finally using a platform. And there is absolutely nothing more blessing than having to do something that kind of serves God and his purpose in order to spread his message. And this being the source of my daily bread is a massive, massive blessing. And I just have absolutely no words to thank every single one of you guys that have been supporting the Woods Show podcast. Every single episode that we have been posting, you guys have been showing absolute love in there. So thank you guys so much for all the love and support. And I really hope to God that I grow in wisdom in terms of giving you guys out much better information. So it's all about wisdom. I really hope that God gives me the wisdom in order to do better in continuing the journey that I'm doing right here on this channel. So thank you guys so much. And with that being said, I would love to hear from you guys down below in the comments. What do you guys think about what we have just spoken about with the inscription that's coming from the Roman emperor that finally gives us a solid proof as for the resurrection of Christ? I really, really want to hear from you guys. What are your opinions? Leave them down below in the comments. It's going to be a very, very interesting comments to go read through and reply to as many people as possible. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys have a wonderful, beautiful new year. I will see you guys much more often this year with more episodes coming very soon. And until then, take it easy, fams, and goodbye.